The mistake that changed everything. The diplomatic disaster. Ambassador David Chen stood frozen in the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Assembly, his face pale as he realized what he had just done. The translator device in his ear had malfunctioned at the worst possible moment. What he thought was a polite greeting in the Krillian language had actually been a severe insult to their ancestors. The chamber fell silent. 200 alien species watched in shock. The Krillian ambassador, a towering figure covered in crystalline armor, rose slowly from his seat. His eyes glowed red with fury. "You dare mock our fallen warriors?" the Krillian roared. "You humans have no respect, no honor, no understanding of civilized behavior." David's hands trembled. He had been Earth's ambassador for only 3 months. This was his first major gathering. And now, because of a faulty translator, he had started an interstellar incident that could lead to war. "I apologize," David stammered. "It was a translation error. I meant no disrespect." Silence. The Krillian ambassador's voice echoed through the massive chamber. "The human species has shown its true nature. Primitive. Careless. Unworthy of sitting among civilized races." Murmurs spread through the assembly. Other ambassadors nodded in agreement. David felt his heart sink. Humanity had worked for 50 years to gain acceptance in the Galactic Assembly. Now, in one moment, he had destroyed everything. The assembly chairman, a floating jellyfish-like being called a Vexorian, spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Ambassador Chen, due to this grave offense, Earth's membership in the Galactic Assembly is hereby suspended. You have 30 days to leave assembly space. All trade agreements are cancelled. All diplomatic ties are severed." David opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. What could he say? The damage was done. The journey home. The shuttle ride back to Earth felt like the longest journey of David's life. He sat alone in the passenger section, replaying the disaster over and over in his mind. His assistant, Sarah Martinez, tried to comfort him. "It wasn't your fault," she said softly. "The translator malfunctioned. Anyone could have." "But it was me," David interrupted, his voice hollow. "I'm the one who destroyed humanity's future in the galaxy." When they arrived at Earth, David expected anger, blame, maybe even arrest. Instead, he found something unexpected. The president of Earth greeted him personally at the landing pad. "Ambassador Chen," President Williams said, shaking his hand. "Welcome home." David blinked in confusion. "Sir, I failed. I ruined everything." The president smiled slightly. "Walk with me." They moved through the corridors of the government complex, away from cameras and crowds. Finally, they entered a secure room deep underground. Inside, a group of scientists and military officials waited. "David," the president began, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Only 12 people on Earth know this truth." David sat down, feeling confused and exhausted. "What truth?" "The truth about humanity's real history with the galaxy," the president said. "The truth about why we've been pretending to be weak, helpless newcomers for the past 50 years. The hidden history." A holographic display activated, showing images David had never seen before. Spaceships that looked far more advanced than anything humanity publicly used. Weapons systems that seemed decades ahead of current technology. Battle records from conflicts he'd never heard about. 73 years ago, the president explained, humanity made first contact with an alien species called the Torvins. They were peaceful explorers, and they welcomed us to the galaxy. They taught us about the Galactic Assembly, the rules of interstellar civilization, the network of trade and diplomacy. David leaned forward. "Why isn't this in any history books?" "Because of what we discovered next," the president continued. "The Torvins took us on a tour of assembly space. They showed us dozens of civilizations, all following the same rules, all trading peacefully. But they also warned us about something. They called it the Silence Protocol. The holographic display changed, showing a massive space station surrounded by warships. The design was sleek, powerful, and clearly built for destruction. The Galactic Assembly, the president said slowly, is not what it appears to be. Yes, it promotes peace and trade among member species. But there's a dark side. Any species that becomes too advanced, too independent, too innovative, they disappear. David felt a chill run down his spine. Disappear? The Assembly has a secret military force called the Silence Fleet. When a species develops technology that threatens the established order, or when they show too much creative thinking, or when they refuse to follow Assembly rules exactly, the Silence Fleet arrives. The entire species is eliminated. Completely. As if they never existed. The holographic images showed footage of planets being destroyed. Cities burning. Entire civilizations wiped out in days. The Torvins tried to warn their own government, the president continued. They tried to expose the silence protocol. Instead, the Assembly discovered their betrayal. We watched as the Torvin homeworld was destroyed. Billions of lives ended in minutes. And we realized something terrifying. What? David whispered. Humanity was next. The decision. The president sat down across from David, his expression grave. Our scientists, our engineers, our military, they were all innovating too quickly. We were developing technology the Assembly had never seen. We were asking questions about physics and reality that made them nervous. We were, by their standards, dangerous. So what did we do? David asked. We made a choice, the president replied. A choice that saved our species. We decided to pretend. The holographic display showed humanity's public face, the bumbling newcomers, the species that barely understood faster-than-light travel, the civilization that needed Assembly guidance for everything. We hid our real technology, the president explained. We created fake histories showing humanity as primitive and dependent. We deliberately made mistakes in diplomacy, in trade, in science. We made ourselves look weak, incompetent, and harmless. And it worked. The Assembly decided we weren't a threat. They let us join, thinking we would always need their help. David's mind raced. But why tell me this now? The president smiled. Because your mistake today was perfect. It reinforced everything the Assembly believes about humans. They think we're careless, culturally ignorant, and socially incompetent. They'll kick us out, yes. But they won't destroy us. They'll just ignore us. And that's exactly what we need. I don't understand, David said. The suspension gives us freedom, the president explained. For 50 years, we've had to pretend under their watchful eyes. We couldn't innovate openly. We couldn't explore certain technologies. We couldn't ask dangerous questions. But now? Now they've dismissed us as failures. They won't pay attention to us anymore. And that means we can finally be ourselves. The real plan. Another scientist stepped forward, a woman named Dr. Emily Ross. Ambassador Chen, humanity has been preparing for this moment for decades. While the galaxy thought we were struggling to master basic assembly technology, we were actually developing something far more advanced. The holographic display changed again, showing blueprints for ships, weapons, and systems David couldn't begin to understand. We've been studying the silence protocol, Dr. Ross continued. We've learned how the assembly tracks potential threats. We've learned their weaknesses. And we've been building countermeasures. But we needed them to stop watching us, the president added. We needed them to dismiss us as irrelevant. Your incident today did exactly that. The assembly will forget about humanity. And while they forget, we'll prepare. David felt overwhelmed. Prepare for what? For the day when other species need protection, the president said. For the day when the assembly targets another innocent civilization. We can't stop the silence protocol directly, not yet. But we can be ready. We can build sanctuaries. We can hide species the assembly wants to eliminate. We can be the galaxy's secret defenders. And no one will suspect us, Sarah added, speaking for the first time. Because we're just the foolish humans who got kicked out of the assembly for being too incompetent to use a translator correctly. David sat back, processing everything. His supposed failure wasn't a failure at all. It was the final piece of a plan 50 years in the making. So what happens now? He asked. The president stood. Now we return to Earth. We announce our suspension from the assembly with appropriate shame and embarrassment. We play the role of the defeated species learning a hard lesson. And in secret, we accelerate our real work. The galaxy thinks humanity is weak and foolish. Let them think that. Let them underestimate us. Because humans have always been at our best when we're underestimated. Dr. Ross added, we have technology the assembly can't imagine. We have courage they've never seen. And most importantly, we have something they lost long ago, the willingness to protect others, even at great cost to ourselves. David felt something shift inside him. His shame began to transform into pride. What do you need from me? Keep being the failed ambassador, the president said with a slight smile. Give speeches about how humanity needs to learn from its mistakes. Talk about how we're retreating to our own space to reflect on our place in the galaxy. Make them believe we're humiliated and broken. Meanwhile, you'll be working with our real diplomatic corps, preparing for the future. I can do that, David said, standing straighter. Good, the president replied. Because 50 years ago, we made a choice to hide our strength. Today, you helped us complete that deception. And tomorrow, when the galaxy needs heroes, humanity will be ready. Not as the powerful empire demanding respect, but as the underestimated species that proves compassion and courage matter more than military might. David looked at the holographic images of Earth's hidden technology, his heart swelling with unexpected pride. The galaxy thought humanity was weak. They thought we were fools. They thought we were failures. They were about to learn how wrong they were, the species that should have died. 5 years later. The distress signal reached Earth's hidden listening posts on a quiet Tuesday morning. Dr. Emily Ross burst into the emergency command center, her tablet displaying data that made her blood run cold. It's happening, she said breathlessly. The Silence Fleet is moving. President Williams, now in his second term, immediately convened the Secret Council. David Chen, who had spent 5 years building humanity's covert network, joined via secure hologram from a remote location. Who's the target? The president asked. The Yolari, Emily replied, pulling up images of a peaceful species that looked like bipedal otters. They're scientists, explorers, and artists. Their crime? They developed a new form of energy generation that's twice as efficient as anything the assembly uses. David felt anger rising in his chest. He had met Yolari diplomats during his brief time in the assembly. They were kind, curious, and genuinely peaceful. How long do they have? The Silence Fleet will reach their system in 48 hours, Emily said. The Yolari have no military to speak of. They won't survive. The council members looked at each other. For 5 years, they had prepared for this moment. Now it was real. Can we evacuate them? Someone asked. Emily shook her head. There are 6 billion Yolari across 3 planets. We can't evacuate everyone in time. Then we fight, David said firmly. The room fell silent. President Williams turned to him. David, if we reveal ourselves, the assembly will know we've been deceiving them. They'll target Earth. I know, David replied. But we didn't spend 5 years preparing just to watch another species die. We have the ships. We have the weapons. We have the element of surprise. If not now, then when? The president looked around the table. One by one, the council members nodded. All right, the president said. Activate the fleet. The hidden armada. In the darkness of space, scattered across dozens of remote star systems, humanity's true fleet awakened. Ships that had been disguised as mining stations powered up. Weapons platforms hidden inside asteroids came online. And from secret shipyards far from any assembly territory, vessels emerged that represented 50 years of hidden innovation. Captain Maria Santos commanded the flagship, a vessel humanity had named Defiance. She had been training for this mission her entire adult life, practicing in simulators, studying assembly tactics, and preparing for a battle that might never come. Now it was real. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "We have 63 combat vessels, 37 support ships, and over 200 defensive drones." Maria felt her heart race. The Silence Fleet usually deployed with 100 warships. Humanity was outmatched in numbers. But they had advantages the assembly didn't know about. "Set course for the Yllari system," Maria ordered. "Maximum stealth. Let's show them what humans can really do." First contact, again. The Silence Fleet arrived at the Yllari homeworld exactly on schedule. 100 massive warships took position around the 3 inhabited planets. The Yllari sent desperate pleas for help, but no one answered. No one in the assembly ever answered when the Silence Fleet arrived. The fleet commander, a being known only as Executor Prime, prepared to give the order to begin planetary bombardment. Then his sensors officer made an impossible report. "Commander, we're detecting unknown vessels approaching." "Identify them," Executor Prime ordered. "Unknown design. Unknown energy signatures." "There." "Commander, they're positioning themselves between us and the Yllari planets." On the bridge of Defiance, Maria watched the Silence Fleet's reaction. She could see their confusion through the tactical displays. They didn't recognize human ships because humanity had never shown them their real technology. "Open a channel," Maria ordered. "Let's introduce ourselves properly." Her face appeared on the view screens of every Silence Fleet ship. She spoke in clear, confident assembly standard language. "Attention Silence Fleet. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Human Defense Force. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." Executor Prime's response was immediate and filled with contempt. "Humans? You are a failed species, expelled from the assembly for incompetence. You have no authority here. Withdraw or be destroyed." Maria smiled. "We're giving you one chance. Leave now, or learn why humanity isn't as incompetent as you thought." "Destroy them," Executor Prime ordered. The Silence Fleet opened fire. Energy weapons that could crack planets lit up space with deadly light. But they hit nothing. Human ships moved with impossible speed and agility, dodging attacks that should have been unavoidable. "Return fire," Maria commanded. "Show them what we've been working on." Humanity's weapons were different from assembly technology. While the Silence Fleet used massive energy cannons that took time to charge, human ships deployed rapid-fire plasma weapons that struck with precision. While the fleet relied on heavy armor, human ships used adaptive shielding that learned and countered each attack. Within minutes, 3 Silence Fleet ships were disabled. The fleet, which had destroyed countless civilizations without ever facing real resistance, suddenly found itself in an actual battle. The truth revealed. On dozens of assembly worlds, citizens watched in shock as news feeds showed the impossible battle. The humans, the foolish, weak, incompetent humans, were fighting the Silence Fleet. And winning. In the assembly hall, ambassadors from 200 species watched the same feeds with growing disbelief. "This is impossible," the Krillian ambassador said, the same one who had condemned Davidson 5 years earlier. "Humans don't have this technology. They barely understood basic spacecraft when we expelled them. But they did have it." And as the battle continued, the truth became clear. Humanity had been lying for 50 years. Everything they had shown the assembly, the primitive ships, the technological struggles, the diplomatic incompetence, had been an act. David Chen's hologram appeared in the assembly hall, transmitted from Earth. He looked very different from the nervous, apologetic ambassador who had left 5 years ago. Now he stood confident and strong. "Members of the Galactic Assembly," David began. For 50 years, humanity has played the role of the weak newcomer. We made mistakes deliberately. We hid our capabilities carefully. And we did all of this for one reason: survival. He shared the footage humanity had collected. Images of the 17 species the assembly had eliminated. Evidence of the silence protocol. Proof that the peaceful assembly was actually a tyrannical system that destroyed anyone who threatened its control. We discovered your secret, David continued. The Torvins tried to warn us before you killed them. And we decided that rather than face extinction, we would hide. We would make you underestimate us. We would wait until we were strong enough to protect not just ourselves, but others. The assembly hall erupted in chaos. Some species were shocked. Others were angry. And a few, David noticed, looked relieved. The battle's end. Back in the Alari system, the Silence Fleet was in full retreat. Half their ships were disabled. The rest fled as human vessels pursued, not to destroy, but to ensure they left. Captain Santos opened a channel to the Alari homeworld. This is Captain Maria Santos of Earth. You are safe. The Silence Fleet will not return. The Alari leader appeared on screen, tears streaming down her furry face. You saved us. We thought no one would come. No one else could, Maria replied gently. But humans don't abandon those who need help. It's not in our nature. The new galaxy. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed. The truth about the Silence Protocol spread rapidly. Species that had lived in fear for centuries realized they didn't have to anymore. The Assembly's authority crumbled as member species demanded reform. Humanity revealed its true technology slowly and carefully. They shared defensive systems with peaceful species. They established sanctuaries for civilizations the Assembly had targeted. They didn't seek to dominate, they sought to protect. Some species feared humanity's revealed strength. Others resented the deception. But most felt something they hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. David Chen stood in the newly reformed Galactic Council, which had replaced the old assembly. This time, he wasn't playing a role. He was genuinely representing humanity's values. We didn't reveal ourselves to conquer, he told the council. We revealed ourselves because someone had to stand up. Someone had to say that might doesn't make right, that innovation shouldn't be punished, and that every species deserves the chance to grow and thrive. The Alari ambassador, sitting nearby, spoke up. The humans saved my species when no one else would. They had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That is true courage. President Williams, addressing Earth's population in a broadcast, explained the past 50 years of deception. Some citizens were angry about the lies. Others understood the necessity. But all felt pride in what humanity had accomplished. We pretended to be weak, the president said. Not because we were cowards, but because we were smart. We hid our strength not to avoid responsibility, but to survive long enough to use it properly. And when the moment came, when another species needed protection, we didn't hesitate. The future. 5 years after revealing themselves, humanity had become one of the galaxy's most respected species. Not through conquest or intimidation, but through the courage to stand up for others. Dr. Emily Ross, now leading humanity's scientific exchange program, worked with dozens of species to develop new technologies. The innovations humanity had hidden for decades were shared freely, benefiting everyone. Captain Maria Santos commanded a joint defense force that included ships from 50 different species. They patrolled the galaxy, protecting peaceful civilizations from those who would harm them. And David Chen, no longer pretending to be incompetent, served as Earth's voice in the new Galactic Council. He advocated for freedom, innovation, and the idea that diversity of thought made the galaxy stronger. The former Silence Fleet commander, Executor Prime, stood trial for war crimes. During his testimony, he made a statement that echoed through the galaxy. We eliminated 17 species because they were too innovative, too independent, too different. We targeted humans for the same reason. But humans were clever. They knew they couldn't beat us through strength alone, so they deceived us. They made us think they were harmless until they were strong enough to stop us. I underestimated them. The entire assembly underestimated them. And that mistake saved countless lives. On Earth, in the secret command center that was no longer secret, President Williams, David Chen, and Dr. Emily Ross stood together, looking at a star map showing all the species now protected by humanity's courage. Was it worth it? David asked. 50 years of pretending to be failures? The president smiled. Look at that map. Billions of lives saved. Dozens of species thriving instead of extinct. A galaxy where innovation is celebrated instead of punished. Yes, David. It was worth it. Emily added, and we learned something important. Strength isn't just about military power or advanced technology. Real strength is knowing when to hide it, when to reveal it, and when to use it to protect others. David looked out at the stars, remembering the moment 5 years ago when he thought he had destroyed humanity's future. Instead, his failure had completed a plan 50 years in the making. The galaxy thought humans were weak, he said softly. They thought we were fools who couldn't even use a translator correctly. They underestimated us in every possible way. And that, the president replied, was the biggest mistake they ever made. Humanity had proven something the galaxy desperately needed to learn. Real power wasn't about domination. Real courage wasn't about never showing fear. And real strength was protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. But more importantly, they would never forget that one species had the courage to stand up when no one else would. The silence protocol was ended. The assembly was reformed. And humanity, the species that should have died like 17 others before them, had instead become the galaxy's unexpected heroes. Not through conquest, but through compassion. Not through intimidation, but through intelligence. Not through dominance, but through the simple human refusal to stand by while others suffered. The stars shone brightly over Earth that night. And somewhere in the galaxy, another species facing persecution looked to the sky with hope, knowing that if the Silence Fleet came for them, humanity would be there. Because that's what humans do. We survive. We adapt. And when the moment comes, we stand up.